did 12-year-old girls start running the world? It looks like Iran and Russia are becoming besties, and now everything Russia does is meant to directly annoy us. Putin smugly goes for a land grab in Crimea after the Olympics, and now all of a sudden, Vlad is the new Shah of Sunset. He's going to help build 2 nuclear facilities in Iran. Israel is like, you guys are a bunch of bitches. You were totally saying bad things about us, and now we stopped a ship full of Iranian arms headed to angry Palestinians. Why not just start spreading rumors about Israel on Facebook while you're at it? And our president is totally not talking to Netanyahu. He has no idea what to do about Putin, and Catherine Ashton is being such a bitch. See what I'm saying? When did junior high get so complicated? If you're ready to graduate, you're in the right place. This is The Independent. Hi there, I'm Kennedy, and welcome to the show. I am joined by Reason Magazine editor-in-chief Matt Welch and Camille Foster from Free Think Media, wearing fuchsia gingham, I might add. Very serious this evening. We are The Independents. Our party panel has some tough questions to answer off the bat. Let's meet our lovely compatriots for the evening. Brooke Goldstein with the Lawfare Project. She's the director. And also with us, it's Red Eye co-host Andy Levy from Fox News Channel. 2 big stars in a glorious night. Well, this has not been an easy week in the world, especially in the Middle East, where sabers are rattling louder than words. Iran seems to be shipping weapons to Palestine. Israel is calling out anyone who talks to Tehran. And now Russia is helping Iran build some nuclear reactors in exchange for oil. So let me ask you, Matt, first, starting, who's a bigger problem, Rouhani or Putin?
Putin. By far, I think, right now. He's upsetting the international order, and he's putting pressure on a neighboring country, violating potentially treaties or international agreements that have been signed, and having a referendum being held under kind of the threat of this army massing. It's got people nervous, and he's got a large nuclear stockpile, and we're kind of unclear what happens now to certain borders and sovereignty of countries in his near abroad. It is more unsettling kind of in the long term than yet another Iranian shooting out the mouth about how he wants to wipe off Israel off the map.
I don't know, dude. Iran's a pretty big problem. What do you think, Camille?
Perhaps, but I mean, this sort of bellicose rhetoric is pretty much par for the course when it comes to Iran and the Middle East. I am pretty nervous about what the United States might do. It does seem as though this is perhaps a reaction from Putin in response to the situation that's unfolding in Crimea.
Well, I think what he's saying is if you give us sanctions, we're going to find a way to get oil.
Yeah,
and guess what? We're going to
find a way to annoy you as well. I mean, this has been a persistent. This whole region has been a persistent thorn in the side of the United States for a very long time, and the only thing I'm really concerned about right now is how we stay the hell out of it, because this does not seem like it really is our problem, and it doesn't seem like we've been a great deal of help in terms of stabilizing the region since the 1950s.
All right, is Russia helping Iran get the bomb?
Well, that's the point. I mean, they're both enablers. If you look at both Russia and Iran's what they're doing in Syria right now, they're both enabling Assad to commit mass murder. But when you think about what is the more imminent threat, Iran is the #1 state sponsor of terrorism right now. They have a presence in Kenya. They have a presence in Syria, in Lebanon, in India. They've carried out terrorist attacks in Saudi Arabia. They're funding Hezbollah. They're funding Hamas. They're all over the globe. And it's not just rhetoric. They are engaged in acts of genocide. It's not just incitement to genocide. And the fact that we haven't referred this to the ICC, the fact that we haven't referred this to the ICJ, for example, it sends the green light that Iran can continue with these acts and with impunity.
You would send it on Syria. That's your...
I mean, there's a multitude of crimes that we could ask the UN Security Council to refer Iran to the ICC. There's a multitude of crimes that states can refer Iran to the ICJ, and that would only be the first step, obviously. I mean, the fact that we haven't said anything, the fact that we haven't accused Iran of genocide or incitement to genocide, it sends the green light. Continue. Do what you're doing with impunity.
All right, so Andy, should Iran be allowed to have a nuclear weapon?
Well, the thing is, if you don't think Iran is trying to develop nuclear weapons, you're crazy. If you don't think Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map, you're crazy. And if you don't think Iran is crazy enough to use nuclear weapons to wipe Israel off the map, you're crazy.
I agree, because they don't have the fear of détente. If you've got an Islamist regime, the thing that kept the U.S. and Russia from killing each other, the Soviet Union rather, was the fear of dying. And you don't necessarily have that with a theocratic.
Well, exactly. And I totally get the argument that Russia is the bigger threat to the globe right now, except that what Iran does with Israel could potentially be a bigger threat because we are more likely to get involved because of our relationship with Israel than we would be in the Crimea or with Ukraine. And if we get dragged into a situation, who knows where it escalates to. So I think there is an argument to be made that if Iran is as crazy as they appear to be, which I think they probably are, ultimately that could be a bigger threat.
One note of caution, President Rouhani did come out last month and say that we shouldn't make this kind of crazy talk because it's not good for deterrence if you act like a seriously crazy offensive person. So he's trying to walk.
Yeah, but then you have Salami saying Islam has given us this wish, capacity, and power to destroy the Zionist regime.
Yeah.
So
But one
he may be
wonders-
saying that. He may be the figurehead, but bubbling just beneath the surface is a cauldron of
But that
crazy.
rhetoric has been there for a very long time. And while I will fully
seems
acknowledge
to
that
be
the
more
folks in
pointed,
Iran
though.
do seem to be pretty unstable, there has not been anything like a full frontal assault on any of their neighbors. They are doing some of
That's
these
not how they
clandestine
operate.
operations.
Yeah.
But again, if they didn't care and if they weren't at all worried about what the potential consequences were because this was a religious fight and they weren't at all rational, wouldn't they be doing other things as opposed to trying to get sanctions lifted? One wonders if there aren't very legitimate opportunities for engagement that might actually improve relations over time and make matters better.
Or are they just
I'm
waiting until they
suggesting
have
it.
nukes?
Perhaps that's the case, but I don't know that that is
I mean,
actually
so
something
what do you
that
do
we've
if you're
seen.
Israel? I mean, do you
I doubt-
preemptively attack Iran?
First of all, I think it's a mistake to look at Iran in an Israel-centric vacuum. Iran has and continues to target American civilians. They've carried out an enabled terrorist attack that kills Americans. So it's not just Israel's problem. But what it looks like is that Israel is going to have to take care of the world's problem because everybody, decides that they're going to wipe their hands clean, and Israel should take care of it because we framed it in a way that Israel is the #1 victim here, and they're not. I mean, the Iranian leaders have come out. They've come out with maps. They've shown.
I don't think Israel wants to be seen as a victim. I think that they are finding ways to go on the offensive as well, and that's what makes it so much more unstable and terrifying. All right, well, it's about to get more expensive for businesses. The president is extending overtime pay using executive action. He says that it will combat inequality and help spread corporate profits around. Liberal economists say it will encourage more hiring, while rationalists foresee businesses cutting jobs to comply. Not every corporation is Apple or Exxon. So isn't this something that could actually very easily hurt small businesses?
Yeah, I think it's mostly a symbolic exercise. It's not going to affect that many people, but it's amazing to me that in year 6 of the single worst recovery in the history of economic recoveries, in the modern history of this, all that the president seems to be able to do is to tinker with things in such a way to discourage the creation of new jobs. He's encouraging people through raising of living wages for government contractors. He's making government work more expensive. He's making employing people more expensive. This is another tinker in that area. At this point in Reagan's presidency, he was doing tax reform.
Yeah.
Obama is tweaking like this in ways that's going to shrink the number of
Can any
jobs.
good come of this?
I have sort of mixed feelings about this. First of all, there's the executive order aspect, which I honestly don't understand. I don't understand where in the Constitution it says that the president can do something like this. I just can't wrap my head around it. And look, as a libertarian, I'm generally opposed to the government, telling businesses what policies they can and cannot set, what wages they can and cannot set. But it does seem in this case that a bunch of businesses aren't playing fair and that they're classifying workers as management who aren't really management to get around paying them overtime.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sit right with me. And I think a lot of times conservatives and libertarians too, we take this blanket view that all business owners are some kind of Randian heroes. Like they're a bunch of John Galts just putting their sweat and blood into everything and doing everything ethically, and we need to support them. That's not the case.
But I think some of the corporations you have the biggest problem with, they are part of the cronyist system, and the government enables them to continue behaving this way.
I agree with that.
And so a prime example is, businesses that were able to opt out of Obamacare. How wonderfully convenient.
Yeah.
All right. Well, did Obamacare directly affect the outcome of the special election in Florida? We'll talk Obamacare's anemic sign-up numbers and whether or not the Florida results add up to bungus hype. Later on, Ron Paul, your hate mail. Bernie Mac Smith returns. It's The Independent. Welcome back to The Independent. Two very literally named people fought for a Florida congressional seat. Alex Sink versus David Jolly. And although she threw the kitchen sink at him, Jolly was so jolly when he prevailed in a close race. A Libertarian candidate took about 5% of the vote. But was this a referendum on Obamacare? Peter Suderman, Reason Magazine's senior editor, joins us to talk about all things Obamacare. Welcome, Peter.
Glad to be here, as always.
Glad to have you, as always. So tell me, what happened in Florida, and does this have anything to do with Obamacare? Should Democrats be worried?
Alex Sink lost is what happened, and lost after being hit over and over and over again for not wanting to repeal the president's health care law. Now, that said, I think that you can spin this a little bit too hard, and I think the Republicans are maybe playing this up just a little bit too much in terms of saying that this was a referendum on Obamacare. After all, Sink, the Democratic candidate, did say that President Obama had failed in the implementation, that it was a big problem, that it was a big mess, and that all she really said was that she wanted to fix the law, though, and not repeal it. That said, I just don't see how her support, even as tepid as it was for the health law, could have helped her, especially with the heavily senior district that she was in.
Can you talk a little bit about how much more she was a known commodity and expected to win a year ago?
Right. I mean, that is one part of the story here, is that she is someone who ran for governor and so had name recognition in the state. She was someone who was better funded than her Republican opponent, was last November up by 20 points on her opponent. So this was someone who was really heavily favored to win. And it's probably the case that those Obamacare ads aimed at her, which talked more about cutting Medicare and sort of the Republican line on entitlements rather than let's repeal Obamacare, it's probably the case that those ads played some role, probably a big role, in eating down her advantage.
Suderman, I'm going to resist the urge to ask you about the current narrative in The Walking Dead. We haven't talked about this. It's really important. But the Obamacare sign-up numbers are in the news again. And as a tactical question politically, is this the thing that Republicans ought to be focusing on when they're talking about this legislation? Does it really erode confidence to continually bring up whether or not the president is hitting the numbers for Obamacare that were laid out so many months ago?
Absolutely, because to bring up The Walking Dead or reference back to it, I think we're looking at a zombie law here. It is sort of a Walking Dead law in that it keeps surviving, but it's not really alive. It's not working the way it's supposed to. It's not hitting any of the metrics that the Obama administration said were important for the law to work.
All right,
prior to the launch of the...
Peter, I have two questions before we run out of time. So what happens if they don't get 1.8 million more signups by the end of open enrollment? Why does open enrollment end at the end of March? And can't the president just change it with executive action again?
The president will probably continue to pursue executive action changes to this law. We don't know exactly what he's going to do. I would say that some sort of delay of the individual mandate is one possibility. Certainly, a lot of Republicans on the Hill are expecting it. The big problem, if they don't hit their numbers, is that either they have to bail out the insurance companies, or the insurance companies have to raise premiums in order to pay for the fact that the insurance pools they've created are smaller and sicker than expected.
Very good. Peter Suderman with a calculator and a brain. I like it very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Beautiful. Dr. Ron Paul weighs in next. Feinstein, Crimea, and what to do about Putin. It's all coming up on The Independent. This is The Independent, where we are always eager to run up the flagpole, concerns and issues that affect you or just make you shake your head. Dianne Feinstein groused yesterday about CIA overreach. This from a woman who would throw herself in front of a moving bus to defend the NSA. Some Republicans are rushing to her defense, while others are choking on her hypocrisy. Well, let's welcome Dr. Ron Paul, host of RonPaulChannel.com. Dr. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you back. And I need to ask you, is it any surprise the CIA is spying on the Intelligence Committee? And what does this say about the various branches of government and their overreach?
Well, I guess you should expect it. You know, when a government becomes the manager of an empire, you know, lying is permissible, so they figure that's okay, and they have to spy on everybody because they don't trust anybody. But it is ironic a bit that Feinstein is finding out what it's like. You know, she doesn't care about our privacy, but lo and behold, she does care about her own. When they tap into her computers, she gets a little bit upset about it. But it proves that she's not concerned so much about privacy for us. But then she has this investigation going on. She's accusing the CIA of not being straightforward about revealing the information. At the same time, not too long ago, we had a whistleblower. Well, how did they treat the whistleblower? The CIA agents that revealed all this corruption and what was going on with torture, but nobody defended him. They sent him off to prison for 30 months. She didn't come to his rescue, and yet that's what this whole thing is about, the investigation over whether or not we have torture. I suspect what's happening is the CIA is doing the cover-up, and they are going to extreme, and they overstep the bound, and she's getting a little bit annoyed now. But believe me, it is an example of government runaway because, you know, there's a lot of people in this country who could make the case for, you know, not only reining in the CIA, but actually getting rid of those types of authority, especially, you know, what is going on in the FISA courts and with NSA. But she's so disingenuous to say that, you know, immediately afterwards we hear from Edward Snowden what was going on. So she wants to codify everything, make everything legal that they have done, and now she's on the side of righteousness, and we should rein in the CIA because they're spying on her.
The spies are calling the cops. The CIA is calling the FBI to tell on mom who holds the purse strings.
Well, in one way, we can look at it and say the infighting can't hurt us, but they're never going to reveal what's really going on because I think the cover-up will exist. Everybody knows you have to cover things up. You don't want to know the truth. Otherwise, we would have heard from the CIA agent, who's now in prison, about what was going on with the torture. No, he was indicted, as so many others have under this administration, under the Espionage Act, and now he's in prison, and he had to plead because they threatened. They said, you know, if you don't plead for something minor, we'll only give you 30 months. We have to have a victory here, or we're going to put you up for 45 years. It's a terrible situation. It's run like a dictatorship, and it's a real tragedy.
Well, Dr. Paul, I wonder if I could ask you a specific question about this unfolding story. I mean, are there any legitimate grounds for withholding details about the treatment of these prisoners in Guantanamo Bay, or is this just another sign or example of administrations, Democratic and Republican, who choose secrecy first as opposed to transparency?
I think there's zero reasons to keep this secret and away from the American people. And if they knew, maybe there'd be more on our side, at least my side, about why we don't need that prison there. No, there's no reason for secrecy. Everything argues in a republic that you should know what's going on, and they hide from it because they know it was illegal.
All right,
and
switching gears, Dr. Paul, because we're running out of time. We want to make sure we get to everything on the table. Crimea votes Sunday as to whether or not they're staying with Ukraine or going back to their abusive ex-boyfriend known as Russia. How will secession destabilize Ukraine, and what if Putin's lust for a Soviet reunion knows no bounds?
Well, this whole thing that Putin is the big cause of the trouble, and yet there's pretty good evidence that the Europeans as well as the American government had contrived to have the overthrow of a government that most people say had been elected. And then for them to come along and say, well, it's an illegal government, and they want to have a referendum now, you know, in Crimea. Oh, no, that's not permissible. And they say everything that Putin does is illegal. He's no angel. But actually, he has some law on his side. They have contracts and agreements and treaties for a naval base there and a permission to go about that area. You know, it reminds me a little bit about what would happen if all of a sudden they said that the Americans are occupying Guantanamo illegally. And we've just invaded Guantanamo. So, you know, it's such a facade and hiding the truth.
Dr. Paul, I think we should get the hell out of Guantanamo, too. I think we agree with that. But can we really say that a referendum is legitimate and worth respecting if it is done in the shadow of a large neighbor massing armies and threatening everybody in the region? Is that a piece of paper worth respecting?
Yeah. I don't think we should do all that threatening. You know, we have armies all over the place.
I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about them at this point.
I know, but we're there. Yeah, I know you're talking about the Russians, but we're annoyed and think this is an excuse. You know, you listen to Graham and McCain. Oh, now we can build our missiles in Russia's backyard. So, no, I don't think so. I think people have a right of self-determination. It's written into international law. It's a moral principle. And of course, if you believe in limited government, everybody should have the right to minimize their government. There should be a right of secession. We love secession when we seceded from the Great Britain, and we loved secession when the Soviet Union broke up. So why not have the breakup of these countries? And I cannot understand how we could argue against an election. That to me sounds like democratic. How can
Yeah,
we
we just
be
had an
for
election
democracy?
in North Korea, and that went swimmingly. Many discussions to be continued. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul.
Thank you.
All right, you can go to ronpaulchannel.com and check in with Ron Paul anytime you choose. Coming up, we've got reality star Kristen Cavallari. Yes, I said it. It's so strange. It's strange enough to be true. But first, what happened to that homicidal kitty who held its family hostage? And did they drop the plunger? Plus, the man with the world's largest arms looks like a freak of nature. You have to see his biceps. You'll vomit. And you'll love it. The Topical Storm is next. Welcome back to The Independence, where we get news in a headlock and squeeze it mercilessly until it begs to be broken. Let's get into the Topical Storm. Topic number one. Last night, we told you about an evil, malicious, overweight cat who swiped a baby in the face and tortured its family in retaliation for being kicked in the kitty buttocks. But if this were your cat and your baby, wouldn't you take the spawn of Satan to a vet and have it sent into eternal slumber? Yes. The Palmer family in Oregon has decided to hire a psychologist, even though they admitted the cat had been violent in the past. That is so irresponsible. So next time there's a run-in with pussy galore, don't go crying to the press when your baby's wearing a pirate patch.
I think that we should bring back Robert Bly. Remember him in the 90s? He was always talking about how, like, we're no longer masculine men anymore. There's a man in this household. He owns a cat and a baby, and he's whining to 911, and he's now going to a psychologist. Just kill the cat, grow a pair.
Very poor decision making on this family's part.
And there are other people who,
Definitely
neighbors who said, we love cats. Probably a single woman, maybe in her 50s or 60s.
Give the cat to them.
Yeah, and the neighbors have said, we'll take the kitty.
Good.
Yeah, I'd take the kitty.
Yeah, I sure would.
Shove a sack of rocks and drop in the Willamette River. That's not true. I totally wouldn't. I love cats. I'm a big cat person. Topic number two, the case of the Michigan mummy. Pia Fahrenkopf died in her Jeep 5 years ago, but no one found the poor dear. And like so many other lonely corpses, she slowly turned into a mummy. Her bills were paid through a checking account that at the time had $54,000 in it, but when the funds ran dry, her house was repossessed. That's when she was discovered by a contractor. She died in 2009, but records show she voted in 2010. The weird thing is, she voted for Grover Cleveland. How did she manage to vote? Was she murdered by someone with a partisan agenda who knew her vote would be the ultimate tiebreaker? Or was she a zombie? You and Suderman would love to chew on this.
We need to look into this. I mean, someone needs to be asking questions about what is going on here, whether or not the zombie apocalypse is upon us. And I think it might be.
Maybe it's starting in Michigan, of all places.
That
Topic
makes a lot of sense.
yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Topic number three, what's the one thing men want, other than the lifelong ability to autoflate? Big bulging biceps. Ladies love that too. Arleno, the Mountain D'Souza,
Oh my God.
sprouted a pair of misshapen, unsightly, lumpy arms by injecting them with mineral oil and alcohol. It's the exact same thing women do to their faces, loaded them up with fillers and freezing agents so they stay lineless and lovely. But this guy is just a freak. It's not even muscle. He probably wouldn't be able to open a jar of pickles.
I'm all in favor of, what's the term of art, like body...
Body dysmorphic disorder.
Well, that's the disorder, but the body...
Modification?
Modification kind of thing. You know, we're all decorating our bodies and doing different things, and it's a whole thing, and it's a way that people express themselves. And I'm glad that people can, and I want to run screaming far away from any person
It
who
looks like he has a really bad form of cancer.
It's gross. Really,
Those
really bad.
lumps. I mean,
really,
I just
really
want
bad.
to take him out.
Yeah. I
Or
don't like
deer.
it. Nope.
I need to give him to that cat's pet psychologist. He needs some help. Topic number four, former Florida Governor Charlie Crist is running for governor again. Although the flip-flopping tanned leather man could be mistaken for a piece of luggage, he makes George Hamilton look like powder. He kept correcting a journalist recently who referred to him as a politician. He prefers to be called a public servant. Oh, yes, just like cops like to be called peace officers, and teachers are educators, and broads are women. If he fails at his latest attempt as a politician, he can keep his day job as a stand-in on The Simpsons. Look at that. He's a total Simpsons character.
I'm so sick of this bit of jargon. For crying out loud, in LA, where you live, the city council members make $180,000 a year. They
Good
get
money.
pensions of hundreds of thousands. There's 10,000 people in California who make more than $100,000 a year just on their pensions. And all this just because for their job, they take our money so they can tell us what not to do. That's not public service. That's public theft.
Amen,
Yeah,
brother.
maybe that's what he should call himself. Leathery Chris. All right, well, coming up here, hate mail and reality star Kristen Cavallari. What the hell is she doing here? But first, our panel is back to decide once and for all if sugar is more harmful than THC. I know you have your ideas, Sweet Thing. Stay with us.
I always find something wrong. You've been putting up with my just way too long.
Welcome back to The Independent. We Americans love Americans. We love to consume many substances that are bad. But what is the worst of the worst? A new Wall Street Journal poll recently asked people what is most harmful: marijuana, tobacco, booze, or sugar? The results may surprise you. 49% of respondents said tobacco is the most harmful of the four. 24% said alcohol. 15% of those polled said sugar, and 8%, only 8% said marijuana. Our sexy panel is back, Brooke and Andy. Welcome, you guys. So I'm going to open it up to you guys first. What do you think is more deadly or dangerous on this list of harmful substances?
I think they probably got it right. I think probably tobacco. I mean, tobacco, you know, as ingested the way we ingest it, kills you.
Yeah.
And alcohol does to a certain also, and I think it's good that that came in second. I have no problem with marijuana being fourth on this. No one's ever died from smoking pot. So I think that's fine.
You a stoner?
No. Why are you asking me that?
Are you holding?
No. No.
But we have different, it's different ideas here. To wrap it up into one poll, it's not quite right,
Yeah.
right? Like there's the OD test.
Do you think it's too arbitrary?
Right. Well, I mean, you're conflating a lot of stuff. The OD test, you can't OD on cigarettes. You could try, but you're not going to.
You can OD on sugar.
It's a little strange.
It would be
to ask.
really hard to OD on sugar.
Have
really,
you tried? It's not hard.
I think Moynihan has tried that.
Well, he's diabetic.
Oh yeah, sure. But like, so you can't OD on marijuana, but there's also the long-term "it's going to kill you" thing. So cigarettes or tobacco wins
Right.
that.
You could
but
choke
then,
to death on an edible, though.
But
There's
they're
also
not
how to-
asking about like heroin.
right. But there's also like the mess up with your life. You know, we've all seen people mess themselves up in their life. I don't see we've seen a lot of people do that with sugar. We've seen.
Are
that.
you kidding?
There are plenty
All
of
right.
people.
I mean, no. What about obese people?
Yeah.
Is it sugar?
It's subjective.
I think-
sugar.
But
Yeah,
this
but
is
I
the
think
whole point. I mean, if you have
if you
diabetes,
crave sugar and you eat high-fat foods that contain
and,
sugar,
and if you have cancer, you have epilepsy, THC is really good for you. So I mean, it's a public opinion poll. And I think what it reflects is not, you know, the medical reality. What it reflects is the fact that we're engaged now in a national debate if pot should be legalized. You look what's going on in Colorado, and people are researching it. They're thinking about it. They're coming to these opinions. You know, pot doesn't make you violent. You can OD on it, but if you use it in a certain way, for example, if you roll it with tobacco, and I guess if you hold it in for too long, it's really bad for your lungs. So, you know, it's a false
but
comparison.
if you roll
here.
anything in with tobacco,
Yeah.
Exactly.
if you
And
roll
inhaling
your hopes
smoke
and
is
dreams in
generally
with
not
tobacco,
and you don't smoke 12 joints a day, you know, or 20.
We can all agree, though, the only solution here is to ban all of these things.
I think
That's
you should
right.
ban
Yeah,
sugar.
okay.
Especially
Especially
sugar.
vaping.
But yeah,
Especially
Vaping sugar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you cannot
Yes.
vape sugar. You
Oh
can
my
mainline
God.
it. I've done it. I've tried. I love sugar.
Dangerous.
I love sugar. If I had to choose between never smoking marijuana again and never eating sugar, I hadn't smoked weed since I was 14. That doesn't count. What? You're condemned.
I didn't know if you were looking at me or just
Palpable.
wistfully remembering the last time you got high.
No, it's horrible. I vomited and hallucinated aliens.
Oh God.
When did it get horrible?
That's funny. Hi. Can your rap lyrics be used against you in a court of law? Street poets everywhere are shuddering about the case of Vontae Skinner. He was convicted in 2008 of attempted murder, and his violent rap lyrics were used against him in trial, even though He did not write anything related to the crime he was accused of. The case is headed to the New Jersey Supreme Court, rather, and the court's decision could have serious First Amendment implications. This is such a strange story because if this were a white guy who had been doodling in his journal, I don't think that the same material would be used in the same context to convict him.
If Nick Cave commits a crime,
Right.
He's host.
I mean, holy
away
cow,
for life.
death penalty? If you listened to O'Malley's Bar recently, my God, he commits about 35 murders in 10 minutes of a murder ballad, which was the name of one of his records. I mean, it's amazing. This should really be cut off, hopefully, in the court system, because these are not linked to the actual crimes. It's a total free speech issue.
But the issue here is that any sort of fringe community that isn't particularly well understood by mainstream folks might actually be set up for something like this. So if a goth kid commits a crime and folks find out that he's listening to death metal, I don't know that goth kids do that, but I'm assuming it's possible, that could be a problem. So obviously, you shot a man in Reno to watch him die, or you shot the sheriff and didn't shoot the deputy, that does not necessarily have any bearing on whether or not you committed the crime. And that's what should actually matter in a criminal trial.
No, I mean, if you have an imagination and you're a poet, it's a strange thing. I mean, if he's a bad person, he's done bad things, certainly he needs to answer for those crimes. But, you know, if his race were slightly different, do you think it would have been?
No, I think this is a complete mischaracterization of the issue. This is not a First Amendment issue. It's not an issue of us being racist. The fact of the matter is, even if you have speech that's otherwise protected by the First Amendment, if it's related to a material issue in the case, it's admissible. If it's not related, it's not. Whether or not it's rap or it's a poem, if a white person or a Chinese person or what have you writes a poem and it's materially related to the issue, then it's admissible. In this case, the appellate court overturned the conviction because the rap at issue was not related whatsoever. It was a mistake for them to admit it because it created this undue prejudice against the defendant, and the judge said he wouldn't have otherwise been convicted. So the right thing was done in this case. It's not a First Amendment issue.
Although the issue is that this has happened on a number of occasions where
But it
certain
depends
people
if
come
the
into
rap
court
was
and hip-hop
materially-
lyrics are used and their interest in
if it was
used
related
against
to
them.
the issue. For example, if there's a guy who writes a poem or a rap or journal entry, whatever you want to call it, and says, I'm going to go kill Joe, and he goes and he kills them.
I don't know, man. They did a study group
where
where they showed the identical lyrics to two focus groups. One they told them was from country lyrics, the other from rap lyrics, and the group they showed the rap lyrics to said that they were offended and threatened by the lyrics.
Yeah,
That's a problem. That's a societal
perception.
prejudice problem, and that's why it's determined pre-trial, in a pre-trial hearing, and the judge makes a decision on a case-by-case basis whether or not there will be undue prejudice to the defendant.
But even the judges can have prejudice, and I think that's part
I'm
of the
not
issue.
prejudiced against you, but we have to go. Thank you very much, Brooke and Andy. Did you want to say? Okay, you have 10 seconds. Go ahead.
No, I don't care anymore.
1, 2, 3.
Make it in a rap.
I think it's straight up racist.
Yo.
And so are you.
Yo.
Yeah, thank you for throwing that in. I named my daughter after a sweaty black man. Okay, take that back right now.
Lotus?
That's a true story. Coming up next, something very different for the independents. Kristen Cavallari is here. She's a former reality star. She's an entrepreneur. But what does she think about vaccines, drug legalization, gay marriage, and her famous husband? Find out next. We have a very special treat. This is a departure for us, but I think it will be wonderful. So join me in the journey as we welcome Kristen Cavallari. You're such a radiant pregnant woman.
Oh my gosh, you're sweet. Thank you.
No, you really are. I'm obsessed with pregnancy and pregnant women and babies.
Are you?
Yes.
I love that. Well,
I would
good.
have had 15 children because I loved being pregnant.
Oh my God, it's so funny. I loved being pregnant with the first one, and this one, I'm over it.
Yeah.
I'm ready to have
No,
them.
you know, it's now a known quantity. You know what to expect.
And there's more aches and pains with the second one, so I'm ready to have him and get this baby out.
So you're having another boy. You're married to Jay Cutler.
Yeah.
People know you from Laguna Beach and Hills.
Yes.
And you have a Chinese laundry
have a
shoe
shoe
and
line.
accessories line.
Yes,
Do
yeah.
you have accessories?
I do shoes with Chinese laundry, and then I also separately have a jewelry line with a company called Glam House.
Okay, what is it about Laguna Beach and the Hills that spawned fashion designers and people who actually have careers post-reality?
I know,
Because that
it's-
doesn't happen for most people.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think, you know, the thing with Laguna Beach is it was one of the first reality shows that kind of took off and people didn't know if it was
And you
real
guys
or
were really
fake.
12.
We were, yeah, it was 10 years ago. I was 17. I was in high school when it
Yeah,
started.
you were a baby.
We were
I mean,
babies.
it seems like it broke child labor laws. But the show really reached people because it felt scripted, but these are real kids.
Exactly. And everything we were going through, everyone can relate to. You know, it was relationship drama, girl drama, everything you go through in high school, everything everyone's been through. Well, my new show is really exciting. It actually premieres Monday night on E, and we're just talking about all of the latest trends in beauty, fashion, and lifestyle. My co-host Orly Shani and I, who was on Fashion Star and NBC, is amazing. And each week we have 2 different panelists come on, and it's just a really fun show. We kind of set the tone for it, which we wanted to make very light and fun while still talking about, you know, fun, exciting trends and being very informative at the same time.
Do you like being in TV as a host as opposed to someone who has manufactured storylines?
I do. I've been interested in the hosting space for a while. It just had to be the right thing. You know, I'm a mom now, and so to be away from my family, we're based in Chicago, it had to be something that I was excited about and loved. And
do you shoot in LA?
No, we actually are shooting in New York, which is great.
That's much closer, though.
It's an hour and a half from Chicago, so it's great. So I was really excited about this show, and it's fun. It's once a week. I can pop in and out.
You can have a child in each city.
I could.
Yeah.
Which I might for a while when I first had this baby.
Yeah, because the baby can't fly.
No.
With all those sneezy people and the Jenny McCarthy's of the world not vaccinating their babies. Crazy. Are you opposed to vaccines?
Oh, we didn't vaccinate.
Really? Mm-hmm. You're one of those communists?
You know what? I read too many books about autism and the studies.
There's no link. Read the links that say that autism and vaccines have no correlation.
Okay, well, say this. There is a pediatric group called Homestead, or Homestead or Home First. Now I'm pregnancy brain, I'm gonna confuse them. But they've never vaccinated any of their children, and they haven't had one case of autism. And now 1 in 88 boys is autistic, which is a really scary statistic.
My mom vaccinated us, and she doesn't have any cases of autism either. Isn't that weird?
The vaccinations have changed over the years. There's more mercury and other...
What about legalizing marijuana?
I don't smoke pot, so
Neither do I, but I think that it should pretty much be legal to anyone who
I mean, I'm okay with it, I guess. It's not my cup of tea, but, you know, I think it's great for the economy.
Have your anti-vaccine people offered you edibles in order to get rid of morning sickness?
I didn't have any morning sickness, so I've been okay with
Oh, you're very lucky. I don't know if you can eat marijuana-laced foods when you're pregnant.
Probably
I wouldn't
not.
Suggest it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are people who...
I'm sure there's people out there who think, hey, why not?
It's the same as a hemp milkshake.
Right, exactly. A little different, but, you know.
And what about same-sex marriage?
I'm okay with it. I really believe if it doesn't directly affect you, why do you care? I think everyone is so hung up on how everyone else should live their lives, and we should just take that energy and focus on ourselves.
If Jay were a woman, would you have married him?
Probably not, because he would. I like that he's like this macho, masculine man.
Yeah.
So if he was a woman, it would probably change.
You're gonna go home and he's gonna watch this. He's gonna say, "You only love me for
yeah,
my
you only
testosterone."
love me. Exactly. I'm gonna say,
Not
yeah,
for my
babe,
soul.
it's true.
What's the hardest part about running a business?
The hardest part about running a business. Sometimes I can second guess myself a lot, and I'm learning to just go with my gut instinct. But you know, with the shoes anyways, you don't want to just put out what you love. You sort of have to think about everybody, and so I really talk to my friends.
You are lovely, and I really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you very much for having
Kristen
me.
Cavallari. Watch her show on E.
Yes.
Don't be a fool. Watch The Fabulous. It's great. And buy her shoes on Chinese Laundry. And when we come back, your hate mail, because you're still a Thanks.
I'm tired of sitting in the way. And I wonder what you gonna do now. What you gonna do about it? I'm thinking about my doorbell
When you gonna ring it? This is The Independence, where we don't shy away from criticism. This is my mom's least favorite segment, where we reach into the mailbag and pull out your vitriol, one angry letter at a time. Fox Business Human Resources Director Bernie Macsmith rejoins us. This is 2 Minutes Hate. It's good to have you, Bernie. Thanks for being here. You look great.
Thank you, Kennedy. I appreciate the compliment, and you can compliment me further by being professional in your job. Let's just jump right into the emails. Gilmore writes, luckily, Kennedy's evening Ritalin enema will keep her chatty until dawn when she returns to hanging from the studio rafters by her feet.
Yeah, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. That doesn't sound very nice, though.
Pam writes, it seems like you can only have an independent viewpoint if you agree with Kennedy.
Ouch. That's pretty true.
Kibby says...
Astute little observation there, Pam.
No, you gave Bernie Sanders some independent cred when he was on here, and you don't necessarily agree with him.
I did not fight him. Thank you, Matt.
Kibby says, my mom already doesn't like Camille, despite agreeing with him on everything he said in the segment I showed her.
I don't understand that at all.
I think it implies,
That's
Camille,
so
that
strange.
you were technically correct, but personally dislikable.
Huh.
That's not necessarily good, Bernie.
I'm a little saddened by that.
Grand Moff Serious Man writes, I'm beginning to suspect that Kennedy possesses only a finite number of earrings. She must spend the rest on booze and pep pills.
Little independent speedball, I call it.
Just point out that truth is always good defense in libel cases.
Jim R. writes, Walsh is a sellout. That's probably in reference to Matt Welsh. The panels you bring in are far and wide the most infuriating idiots on the planet.
Huh. Well, that's not really directed at us.
Matt is the co-host. He's not a panelist.
Yeah.
But Walsh is a total sellout. Whoever he is, he's a dick.
Saltycon writes, who dresses at Kennedy Nation? If she has any friends, why do they let her on the air donning mismatched granimals?
I don't have enough money left over from my booze and pep pills to buy friends, sadly.
What is a granimal?
It was, it was like 70s and 80s kids clothing where you would just match the tags and then you knew the outfit went together. Like if I had 2 giraffes, then I would know that it was safe to wear those things at the same time.
Okay, well, I learned something on your show.
Does that explain Camille's sartorial excellence?
Is it sartorial excellence? I'm not sure. I don't really feel great about myself today.
I think that's the one thing you're doing very well on, Camille.
Thank you.
There's another one from Benny Marr. I found Waldo. He's the tool that reads viewer complaints. Thank you, Benny. I'm missing book club to be here. That's great. Finally, Alamanian says, this is kind of boring and sucks. Is Ron Paul still around? He was good.
Okay.
Well, we had him on this episode, right?
Yeah. So we're doing the right things.
Doing something, Alamanian.
Good.
You did a good job taking a current complaint and working it into the show. Good job, Bernie.
I appreciate that. I take my job very seriously.
I'm going to give you a review someday, so just be prepared for that. It's in my right. I checked the employee manual.
All right, well, I'll be waiting for that.
Very good. Thank you for watching tonight. Stossel is in the slots tomorrow night. Then Friday, we're back with a special show, What's Wrong with Libertarians? The whole hour, we will take some abuse from liberals and conservatives alike, trying to figure out what's wrong with us libertarians, why we're weird, why we lose elections, and of course, why we're always right about everything. It's Friday night at 9 and midnight. I hope you're there for it. Thank you so much for being here. For Matt Welch and Camille Foster, I'm Kennedy. Good night.